The sun was just beginning to set as my daughter stood at the altar, her voice steady as she recited her vows. I remember feeling so proud, so full, so ready to let go. And then she froze, her eyes locked on something or someone at the very back of the ceremony. Her voice faltered. The entire gathering went silent for half a breath. When I followed her gaze, I saw him, a man in a gray suit standing alone, watching the same scar above his brow. The same jawline I used to hold in my palms. The man we buried 10 years ago. My name is Elaine Morgan, and that day was supposed to be the happiest of my daughter's life. Instead, it became the day her father, my dead husband, came back from the grave. He didn't return with an apology. He brought another wife and a child, and a truth so vile it made me question everything we ever shared. Would you forgive someone who made you mourn them for a decade, just to show up uninvited at your daughter's wedding? Tell me what you would have done in the comments, and if you want more stories like this, subscribe now. This is just the beginning. 10 years ago, I buried an empty casket. The man inside, at least the one I thought was inside, was Gavin Morgan, my husband of 15 years, father to our only daughter, Chloe. He was a charming man, the kind who made you feel like the center of the world when he looked at you. Sharp dresser, smooth words. Knew how to fill a room with energy, but more than anything else, he loved the water. Sailing was his escape. It was also where he supposedly died. They said it was a tragic accident. His boat was found capsized near the eastern bend of Lake Ontario. The Coast Guard recovered his waterlogged wallet and wedding ring. No body. Just the cold certainty of the lake. His death was ruled a probable drowning. After 3 agonizing weeks of search parties, I was advised to begin the grieving process. That process almost broke me at the time. Chloe was only 15. Bright, headstrong, always watching me. I didn't get to fall apart. I had to get up, feed her, drive her to school, pretend like the world still made sense. But inside, I was hollow. We buried an empty coffin in a cemetery just outside Buffalo, and I buried my heart with it. Grief didn't kill me, though. In a way, it remade me with Gavin gone. All our accounts were frozen during the investigation. His firm was being audited, and I didn't even understand the language they used when they called. I went from stay-at-home wife to accidental CEO. I started my own event planning business. It was slow at first. Tiny weddings, small community events, but eventually the company grew. I built something for Chloe and me, something that couldn't vanish with a wave or a storm, and I made sure Chloe never lacked love. She graduated high school with honors, earned a scholarship to NYU. I stood at her college graduation with tears streaming down my face. Not because she'd made it, but because we had. All those years I kept Gavin alive in our memories. I told Chloe about his sailing metaphors, the way he used to say, "Marriage is like a boat. If you don't patch the leaks, it sinks." We visited his grave every year on his birthday. Chloe never forgot him, and I tried to let go. But some ghosts refused to be buried. Then came Chloe's engagement. Lucas White, a kind man, steady, reliable, nothing flashy. He adored Chloe. The way he looked at her reminded me of how Gavin once looked at me before things got complicated. Chloe chose the venue by the lake, that lake, because in her words, it's where we were happiest. I want Dad to be part of it somehow. I hesitated. Of course I did. But how could I say no? If this wedding was Chloe's tribute to a father she'd lost too soon, I wasn't going to stand in the way. The morning of the wedding, the light spilled through the bridal suite like gold dust. I helped her pin a vintage pearl brooch into her hair, one that had belonged to my mother. "Something old, something borrowed," I whispered. She turned to me, eyes shining with anticipation, and something softer. "Do you think Dad would have liked the way everything turned out?" I smiled. "A rehearsed one. He would have been proud of you, Chloe. He should have been the one walking you down the aisle." I felt the ache again, but I swallowed it. I had learned how to silence it after 10 years. Uncle Mark, my brother, was going to walk her down the aisle. He'd been there for us since Gavin's disappearance, stepping up in quiet ways that mattered more than words ever could. Everything was set. The flowers, the string quartet, the seating. Chloe stood radiant at the entrance. The music began. Guests turned. And I thought, this is it. We made it until Chloe stopped mid-aisle, until I saw the color drain from her face, until I turned to follow her gaze, and saw the ghost of a man who should have stayed buried. Gavin Morgan back from the dead. watching from the shadows like he had every right to be there. And beside him, an elegant woman in a green dress, her hand resting on his. I didn't know it then, but that moment would unravel every truth I had built over a decade, and everything that followed would test the very limits of love, loyalty, and forgiveness. After the ceremony, guests drifted toward the cocktail hour, laughing, sipping champagne, basking in the afterglow of a picture-perfect wedding, but not Chloe. I found her standing in a shadowed corner just outside the women's restroom, her complexion pale as porcelain hands shaking. Chloe, I whispered, placing a hand on her arm. She looked at me with eyes I hadn't seen since she was 15. Wide, wounded, terrified mom, she said. Barely audible, I need you to come with me right now. I followed her into a private dressing room down the hall. She closed the door, locked it, and turned to face me. Her voice was trembling. Promise me you'll stay calm, Chloe. What's going on? You scared me. She took a breath. Dad is here. I stared at her. Sweetheart? No, she interrupted, gripping my arms, her strength surprising me. He's alive, I saw him. He was in the back during the ceremony. He's with some woman, gray suit, green dress. Same scar above his eyebrow. The one from when I hit him with that toy airplane when I was 6. The air in my lungs thinned. I tried to speak, but nothing came out, because that scar was real. That memory was ours, and I hadn't told anyone about it in years. I forced myself to stay grounded, to be the voice of reason. Maybe it was someone who just looked like him. It's been 10 years, Chloe. You were nervous. Your mind could have... No. Her voice cracked. It was him, I know it. The conviction in her face was unshakable. My daughter, the practical one, never one for fantasies, was absolutely certain. And that scared me more than anything. Where, I asked. She told me he'd come in late, slipped into the back row quietly. Just a glimpse, but enough. I left her in the dressing room and returned to the reception. The music was soft, the lights golden. Guests were smiling, dancing. None of them knew the earth had just cracked beneath my feet. I made my way around the venue, slowly acting like I was just greeting people, but my eyes scanned every table. And then I saw him. Table 9, near the back. A man with silver in his hair, in a tailored gray suit. The angle of his jaw, the slope of his shoulders. The way he held his glass in his left hand, thumb curled just slightly under the base. Gavin, and beside him, a woman mid-40s. Elegant in a green satin dress, her hand resting on his thigh, as he leaned in and whispered something to her. I froze. The glass in my hand slipped slightly, catching on my ring finger. My knees almost buckled. I hadn't seen that face in 10 years, but every inch of it was burned into me like muscle memory. Gavin turned his head and he saw me. I felt the air shift. His expression faltered just for a second. Not surprise, not fear, but something darker. A strange, quiet guilt. Like he'd been waiting for this confrontation, and now that it had arrived, he knew he couldn't run. He said something to the woman beside him, and she turned puzzled. I moved, straight through the crowd, no longer hearing the music or the laughter or the voices around me, only the blood rushing in my ears. He stood up as I approached Elaine. He said softly. I slapped him. The sound cracked through the reception like glass shattering. People turned, the music stumbled to a halt. Gavin didn't flinch. He touched his cheek almost reverently and nodded like he'd been waiting for that blow for 10 years. How dare you, I hissed. The woman stood up, confused. Michael, what's going on? I looked at her. His name is not Michael. His name is Gavin Morgan, my husband, the man who drowned 10 years ago. She blinked, her face going pale. No. That's impossible. Michael's wife died of cancer. He's a widower. I laughed. A short, hollow sound. Well, I'm very much alive, and I've been mourning this man for a decade. Security approached, confused but alert. Chloe and Lucas were coming toward us, faces drawn in confusion and concern. I turned to Gavin. No to the stranger I thought I knew. You will explain this. You owe it to our daughter. His expression softened at the word, daughter. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the man he used to be. Then he nodded. And that's how we found ourselves in a small private office at the back of the venue. Me, Chloe, the woman he now called his wife, and the man who had once sworn to love me forever. Everything I thought I knew was about to burn. The door to the private office shut with a soft click behind us, muffling the music and laughter still echoing through the reception hall. Chloe sat beside me, her hands clenched tight in her lap. Across from us sat Gavin, no longer just the ghost of a dead husband, but something worse. Something breathing real and rotten. Next to him, the woman in the green dress, Rachel, looked like she might vomit. Her world was unraveling just as fast as ours. Talk, I said, my voice low and sharp. All of it. No more games. Gavin, no Michael or whatever name he wore now, looked between us. Then down at his hands, his voice was steady, almost rehearsed. My name is Gavin Morgan. I faked my death 10 years ago. Chloe flinched. Rachel gasped. He kept talking. I was working for an investment firm. Things started to spiral. Bad investments, missed margins. I tried to cover for it, but the truth is, I was also gambling. A lot. I felt my stomach turn. I thought I could fix it before anyone found out. But the hole kept getting deeper. My partner, Adam Green, discovered what I'd done. He threatened to report me, so you let the lake take the blame, I thought. And you let your partner go to prison. I staged the sailing accident. I knew the current patterns. I made sure the boat would be found, but not my body. I left my ring and wallet, enough to make it convincing. Convincing, I repeated, nearly choking on the word. I had to stand over an empty casket. I had to tell our 15-year-old daughter that her father was never coming home. Chloe's voice cracked beside me. Why, Dad? Why didn't you tell us anything? Why did you just disappear? He turned to her, eyes glassy. Because I thought it was the only way. I was trying to protect you. I couldn't hold it in, protect us. From what shame, responsibility? You didn't protect us. You abandoned us. You let us believe you were dead while you built a new life with her. Rachel flinched, her eyes wide. I didn't know. He told me his wife had died of cancer, that Chloe blamed him, that they'd cut contact. She stared at Gavin like he was a stranger. You showed me a picture of her. Said it was the only thing you had left, that your daughter hated you. Gavin looked ashamed. I needed a story. A clean slate. And what about your son? I asked coldly. Does he know he was born out of a lie too? Noah is 7, Rachel said softly. He doesn't know any of this. You built a family on top of our grave, I whispered. And now you just show up at Chloe's wedding. Why? I saw the engagement announcement in the paper. He said, I don't know. Something snapped. I just wanted to see her again. Even from a distance. You brought Rachel, I snapped. You didn't come to watch from the shadows. You came to insert yourself back into a life you gave up the right to be part of. Chloe stared at him. We visited your grave every year. I wrote letters I buried in the snow. You watched me grow up from the sidelines, and still, you never said a word. Then she asked something that cut through the air like a blade. Where have you been? He hesitated. Rochester. About an hour from here for the last 6 years. An hour. He had been living an hour away from us. For 6 years. I couldn't breathe, he continued. I worked under the name Michael Pierce, financial consulting, kept a low profile. You stole from my parents, I said suddenly, my voice trembling. Didn't you? Gavin's silence was answer enough. They lost their house. My father had to go back to work at 68. They died thinking they had made poor investments. But it was you. He couldn't meet my eyes. Then Rachel spoke again, her voice ice. What about our marriage? Is it even legal? No, I answered for him. Because he never divorced me. I have the documents I checked. Which means you're not his wife. You're just collateral. Rachel stood up. I'm taking Noah and we're leaving. I don't even know who you are. She looked at me. We should talk, you and I. I nodded. Call me tomorrow. Rachel left, her heels clicking like gunshots. And then it was just me, Chloe, and the man I once thought I'd grow old with. What happens now? He asked, voice hoarse. Chloe stood slowly. Now we get through the rest of my wedding day. You don't speak, you don't draw attention, you sit in the back and disappear after dessert. I looked at him one last time. Tomorrow. Gavin, you and I are going to talk. And after that, the police will. He blinked. You'd send me to prison. I didn't even hesitate. You already did this to someone else. You won't do it again. Not to Chloe. Not to Noah. And definitely not to me. I barely slept that night. After the reception ended, after the lights dimmed and the last guest was gone, I stayed behind. I collected Chloe's bouquet, packed her things from the bridal suite, and sat in the silence of the venue. Trying to breathe Gavin, no Michael was somewhere out there, alive, free, and still lying. The man I had mourned, the man who left us to scrape by on our own, who let our daughter grow up without a father, who stole from my parents and let his business partner take the fall, was sitting at a hotel room just a few miles away, probably sipping a glass of wine with the same calm he always wore when he was hiding something. The next morning, I met with a lawyer. I laid it all out: the fake death, the insurance money, the financial fraud, the bigamy, the fact that Gavin and I were still legally married. The look on my lawyer's face said everything. We had a case strong enough to knock down a concrete wall. Meanwhile, Rachel called. I didn't sleep either, she said, her voice hollow. Noah doesn't know yet. He just thinks we left early because the wedding was too loud. But I know it's time. I hesitated. We're going to the police. She didn't argue. I want to be part of it. That day we sat side by side at the local precinct. 2 women, same man, 2 versions of hell. We gave sworn statements. I provided our marriage certificate, his death certificate, proof of the insurance payout, and recent photos from Chloe's wedding. Rachel brought emails, fake IDs, bank withdrawals. The detective assigned looked skeptical at first, until we laid it all out like a trail of ash. When was the last time you saw him? The officer asked. Yesterday. I replied. He was at the wedding venue. And, do you know where he's staying now? Rachel nodded. Hampton Inn, room 204, under the name Michael Pierce. The detective raised an eyebrow. We'll coordinate with Rochester PD. As we left, Rachel turned to me. There's more. She opened her purse and pulled out a bank statement. For the past year, Gavin's been withdrawing large sums of cash from different accounts. I thought he was investing or transferring business funds. But now I think he was preparing for this. I felt my jaw clench. Preparing to run again, Rachel nodded. I also found reference to a safety deposit box in downtown Buffalo rented. Under a trust name, could be nothing. Or everything. We handed that over too. That night I called Chloe. She and Lucas had flown to Aruba that morning. I hadn't planned to tell her until after the honeymoon, but this wasn't something I could keep from her now. They're going to arrest him, I said gently. I gave them everything. She was quiet for a long time. Good 2 days later, I got the call. Mrs. Morgan, we've arrested Gavin. Morgan, also known as Michael Pierce, at the Buffalo airport. He had a suitcase full of cash and a forged passport under yet another name. The officer's tone was grave. He was trying to flee. Likely out of the country. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and nausea. Of course he was running. That's all Gavin had ever done. Run from consequences, from truth, from the people who loved him. Now finally he couldn't. The following week, Chloe returned early from her honeymoon. She'd seen the news online before I could shield her. Why didn't you tell me sooner? She asked, her voice tight. Because you deserved at least a few days of peace, I answered softly. Before this storm came crashing back, she nodded, her eyes filled with something heavier than anger. A quiet kind of heartbreak. He was there, Mom. For my graduation, for Grandma's funeral, and he just watched. Didn't say a word. I didn't try to comfort her. There was no comfort in the truth, only clarity. Meanwhile, Rachel told Noah the truth. She explained it simply, honestly. Your father lied. She said he hurt people. He made choices that broke trust. And now, he has to face what he did. Noah didn't cry. He just asked, was I a lie too? Rachel told me. That's when she broke down. No, she sobbed. You're the best truth I ever had. We decided to file the charges together. Fraud, identity theft, bigamy, insurance, deception, financial crime. Even aiding in the wrongful imprisonment of Adam Green, his former business partner who had spent 4 years in prison for something Gavin did. The legal system moved quickly after that. Depositions, interviews, evidence stacking higher and higher. Gavin, or whatever version of him remained, sat in a holding cell, finally unable to run, and I finally slept through the night, not because justice had been served yet, but because for the first time in a decade, I wasn't being haunted by a ghost. I was watching a man face the mirror he had avoided for too long. The courthouse smelled like old wood and waiting. It had been almost a year since the day Gavin Morgan walked into our lives again. Uninvited, unwanted, and shattered what little piece we had rebuilt. Now he stood at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit, shoulders hunched, hair fully gray at the temples. I sat in the gallery with Chloe beside me, her hand curled around mine. Rachel and Noah were on the other side of the aisle, quiet but present. Behind us, Adam Green, the man who went to prison for Gavin's crimes, sat alone, arms folded, face unreadable. The judge was a woman named Patricia Mills, stern, sharp. "No tolerance for theatrics, Mr. Morgan," she said, flipping through the thick folder before her. "You've pled guilty to multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, bigamy, tax evasion, and providing false information to federal agencies. Do you wish to make a statement before sentencing?" Gavin stood slowly. His voice was calm, measured, too calm. "I want to acknowledge the pain I've caused," he began. "To my former business partner, to my wife, Elaine, and our daughter, Chloe. To Rachel and Noah. I have no excuse. I ran from the truth I chose. Fear I chose. Selfishness. And I destroyed lives because of it." He paused, looking down at his hands. "I don't ask for forgiveness. I only hope that someday those I've hurt can find peace not for me, but for themselves." I stared at him. He sounded sincere. But after a decade of lies, I didn't know if sincerity from Gavin was even real anymore. Chloe didn't blink. She just kept breathing, calm, steady, my daughter, unshakable. The judge cleared her throat. "I've reviewed the plea agreement, the restitution plans, and the statements from victims. The prosecution recommends a reduced sentence in exchange for your cooperation in clearing Mr. Green's name and aiding in the recovery of stolen assets." She removed her glasses. "But let me be clear. You let a man go to prison in your place. You allowed your wife and daughter to grieve a death that never happened. You fabricated identities. You defrauded clients and family. You lived a lie over and over and built more lives on top of it." She looked him straight in the eye. "This court sentences you to 8 years in federal prison. You will be eligible for parole after 4, provided full restitution is met and continued cooperation with investigators remains in good faith." There was a long silence. Then the gavel fell. It was done. Chloe let out a breath she'd been holding for months. Rachel leaned over and whispered something to Noah, who nodded solemnly. Adam Green sat back in his chair, not triumphant, just relieved. Outside the courthouse, we stood together, an unlikely cluster of people bound by damage, history, and choice. "How do you feel?" I asked Chloe. She shrugged. 4 years isn't much, but it's something. I nodded. "It's real time and he's not running anymore." Rachel walked over to me. "He asked me to bring Noah to see him once he's transferred to the facility. Will you?" I asked. "Yes," she said softly, "but only if Noah wants to go." And then, to my surprise, Chloe stepped forward. "If Noah does visit," she said to Rachel, "I'd like to come too. Maybe not right away, but eventually." Rachel blinked. "Really?" Chloe nodded. "He's still my brother." Later that week, Thomas Adam Green called me. "I wanted to thank you, Elaine," he said. "The FBI's cleared my name. I'm getting my license reinstated. I can finally start again. You deserve that." "A long time ago," I told him. "And Gavin," he asked, "in prison, where he should have been 10 years ago." He sighed. "Funny thing, I don't even hate him anymore. I just want to move on." Same here. That weekend, Chloe invited Rachel and Noah over for dinner. It was awkward but real. Noah brought a drawing for Chloe, a dinosaur, labeled T-Rex Sister. She laughed until she cried. The conversation stayed away from Gavin. We talked about work, school, vacations, about what Chloe and Lucas were planning next. At one point, Chloe leaned over to Noah and whispered, "You know, if I ever have a kid that'll make you an uncle." His eyes lit up. "Really, really." We shared lasagna, red wine, and a silence that didn't feel heavy. Just human. I realized then healing wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was slow dinners, honest words. Showing up after the guests left. Chloe and I sat on the porch. "I never thought my family would look like this," she said. I smiled. None of us did. But I think I'm okay with it. Me too. Above us, the stars blinked quietly, constant, even when the world fell apart. A year later, I stood in a hospital hallway, listening to my granddaughter take her first breaths. Chloe had gone into labor just after midnight. Lucas was pacing beside the delivery room, hair disheveled, hands clenched, heart full. I sat nearby, quiet, steady. Waiting, Rachel and Noah arrived not long after. He was 9 now, taller, thinner, but still carrying the same wide-eyed softness Gavin used to have. Before the lies, He brought Chloe a potted plant. "It's called a peace lily," he said. "Proudly, Mom said you like flowers that grow in hard places." When the nurse stepped out and called for the mother and Mrs. Pierce, Chloe had asked for both of us to come meet her daughter. Her name is Sophia, 7 pounds perfect, with just a hint of dark hair and sleepy, curious eyes. And when Chloe looked at me and whispered, "She deserves to know her whole story, messy parts," and all, I realized something. We hadn't just survived Gavin's betrayal, we'd transformed because of it. Later that month, I received a letter from him. Still handwritten, still in that neat, deliberate style he always used when he wanted something to feel sincere. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He just wrote that the greatest punishment he lived with was knowing he gave up a real life with us for an illusion. I didn't write back. But I didn't tear it up either. I folded it gently, placed it in a drawer, and then I picked up my granddaughter and whispered to her the truth. That love, when it's real, doesn't run. That some people disappear not because they're dead, but because they're too afraid to live honestly. And that even from the most broken pieces, we can build something new. What do you say to the ghost who came back? Not the literal kind, but the one who sat quietly while you grieved, rebuilt, and redefined everything, only to return when your world no longer needed him. Gavin's story wasn't just about betrayal. It was about choices, cowardice dressed as protection, abandonment disguised as sacrifice, and the cruel way lies fracture the people left behind. But this story isn't his anymore. It's Chloe's, it's Rachel's, it's Noah's, it's mine. We chose not to be broken. We chose truth even when it hurt. We chose to sit at the same table, build something new, and let healing have a voice, louder than resentment. No, we didn't get the ending we thought we would, but we got something better. We got honesty, and in the end, that saved us. So I'll ask you this: if someone you loved came back from the dead, but brought a lifetime of lies with them, would you let them in? Tell me what you would have done in the comments. If you stood with Chloe, vote number 7. If you believe some people deserve a second chance, vote number 2. And if this story moved you, tap like, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to EN Reddit Story, where every story reminds us that truth always finds its way home. Until next time.